Let me start by saying this. I never imagined I'd become the kind of person who depends on machines to stay alive. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. About a month ago, I underwent my second heart surgery. It was rough, to say the least. The doctors told me that recovery would take time, and that I needed something called a heart monitor to keep tabs on my condition. This little device is supposed to track every beat of my heart and alert medical professionals if anything goes wrong. Without it, I'm basically walking around without a safety net. At first, I hated the idea. Having wires attached to your body isn't exactly glamorous, and the constant beeping felt like a reminder of how fragile I am. But after a few days, I got used to it, or at least as used to it as someone can. The monitor became part of my routine, just another thing I had to carry along with my wallet and keys. Sure, it wasn't fun, but it kept me alive. And honestly, that was enough for me. Our neighborhood is usually quiet, which made adjusting to this new normal easier. We live in a suburban area where everyone keeps to themselves. People wave politely when they see each other, maybe exchange pleasantries during garbage pickup or while mowing their lawns. It's peaceful here, or at least it was until Karen moved in 2 doors down about 3 weeks ago. Karen brought chaos with her. She arrived with her husband, 2 energetic kids, and an attitude that screamed entitlement. From the moment she stepped foot into the community, she acted like she owned the place. Loud music blared from her backyard late into the night. Her kids ran wild, trampling flower beds and leaving toys scattered across driveways. Neighbors tried to talk to her about it, but she brushed them off with a laugh, saying things like, "Relax, it's not a big deal," or "You're too uptight." I tried to ignore her antics because, honestly, I didn't have the energy to deal with drama. I figured as long as she stayed out of my business, I could focus on healing. Unfortunately, fate had other plans. One sunny afternoon, I decided to sit in my backyard. It was one of those rare days when the weather was perfect, not too hot, not too cold, and I wanted to enjoy it. My heart monitor sat securely on my waistband, doing its job silently. In the distance, I could hear Karen's kids playing tag. Their laughter floated over the fence, mingling with the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Normally, their noise didn't bother me. Kids will be kids, right? But then everything changed. "Mommy, Mummy, look what he has," one of Karen's kids shouted suddenly. Before I could even process what was happening, Karen appeared at the edge of my yard. She was wearing yoga pants and a tank top, her hair pulled back into a messy bun. Her hands were planted firmly on her hips, and her expression was somewhere between curiosity and annoyance. "What is day 8? She demanded, pointing straight at my heart monitor. Her tone was sharp, almost accusatory. I stared at her, confused. "It's medical equipment," I said slowly, unsure why she cared. "I need it to—" "Oh, spare me the lecture," she interrupted, rolling her eyes dramatically. "That thing looks like a toy. My kids want it." My jaw dropped. Did she really just say that? "Karen, this isn't a toy," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm despite the absurdity of the situation. "It's monitoring my heart rate. If something happens, it alerts my doctor." She scoffed, clearly unimpressed. "Oh, stop being so dramatic. Doctors, schmuckters. My kids have never seen anything like it. They think it's cool. Hand it over." I blinked, certain I must have misheard her. Was she seriously asking me to give up a piece of equipment designed to save my life? Surely, she couldn't mean it, but the look on her face told me otherwise. She meant every word. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My heart monitor, a piece of medical equipment literally keeping me alive, was being treated like some kind of novelty gadget by Karen. The absurdity of the situation hit me so hard that for a moment I forgot how to respond. All I could do was stare at her, my mouth slightly open, as if waiting for her to burst into laughter and say it was all a joke. But Karen wasn't laughing. Her sharp eyes locked onto mine, daring me to challenge her. She had this way about her, this air of confidence that bordered on arrogance, like she believed the world would bend to her will no matter what. And judging by the way she stood there, arms crossed, tapping her foot impatiently, it seemed she expected me to hand over the monitor without a fight. "Karen," I started again, my voice firmer this time. "You don't understand. This isn't a toy. It's not something you can just take or play with. It's connected to me. It's monitoring my heart. If something goes wrong, it sends alerts to my doctor. Without it, I'm in danger." She rolled her eyes again, clearly uninterested in anything I had to say. "Danger? Please. You're fine. Look at you. You're sitting here, breathing, talking. Stop acting like you're one step away from collapsing." Besides, she added with a dismissive wave of her hand, "My kids want it. They've never seen anything like it, and they're bored. Do you know how hard it is to entertain them all the time?" Her words left me speechless. Did she really think boredom was more important than someone's health? Was she actually comparing the needs of her children to the very real possibility of me having a medical emergency? I opened my mouth to argue further, but before I could get a word out, she took matters into her own hands, literally. Before I realized what was happening, Karen lunged forward. In one swift motion, she grabbed the heart monitor dangling from my waistband and yanked it off. The wires pulled taut against my skin, sending a sharp pain through my chest. I gasped, instinctively reaching out to stop her, but it was too late. The adhesive pads holding the sensors to my body ripped away, leaving behind a stinging sensation and raw patches of skin. "What are you doing?" I shouted, panic rising in my throat. My hands flew to my chest, trying to cover the now empty spots where the sensors had been. My mind raced with terrifying thoughts. What if my heart rate spiked right now? What if something went wrong and no one knew because the monitor was gone? Karen didn't seem to care. She held the device up triumphantly, inspecting it like it was some kind of prize she'd won. "See? No big deal," she said smugly. "It came right off. Easy peasy." "Easy peasy," I repeated, incredulous. "Are you serious right now? This isn't a game, Karen. That thing is supposed to keep me safe." She rolled her eyes yet again, clearly annoyed that I wasn't playing along with her ridiculous logic. "Oh, relax. You're making such a fuss over nothing. My kids will have more fun with it than you ever did anyway." With that, she turned on her heel and marched back toward her house, leaving me stunned and shaking in her wake. As I sat there, clutching my chest and trying to catch my breath, I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Anger, fear, disbelief. How could someone be so reckless? So selfish? Didn't she realize the gravity of what she'd just done? Or did she simply not care? The monitor let out a single weak beep in Karen's hand before going silent. She glanced down at it, frowning slightly. "Huh. Guess it's broken," she muttered, shaking it like it was a malfunctioning TV remote. "Broken? Are you insane?" I yelled, my voice cracking with frustration. "That's not broken. It's essential. Essential to my life." Karen stopped mid-step and turned back to look at me, her expression unreadable. For a brief second, I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd realized the seriousness of her actions. But instead, she smirked, as if my distress amused her. "Relax. Drama queen. You're still breathing, aren't you? Clearly, you don't need it as much as you think." And with that, she disappeared into her house, leaving me alone in my backyard, heart pounding, not just from adrenaline, but from sheer terror. For a few moments, I just sat there, frozen. My chest felt tight, not just from the physical pain of the sensors being ripped away, but from the overwhelming mix of emotions swirling inside me. Anger bubbled under the surface, threatening to boil over, while fear gripped my heart like an icy hand. This wasn't just about Karen's ridiculous behavior anymore. It was about survival. That monitor wasn't some optional gadget. It was a lifeline. Without it, I was exposed, vulnerable, and completely at the mercy of my unpredictable body. I tried to calm myself down. Deep breaths, I told myself, in and out. But every inhale felt shallow, every exhale shaky. What if something went wrong right now? What if my heart decided to act up, and there was no way for anyone to know? The thought made my stomach churn. I had never felt so powerless in my life. Finally, after what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, I managed to pull out my phone with trembling hands. I needed help. I needed answers. So I called my doctor. When he picked up, I explained everything as quickly as I could. How Karen had taken the monitor, how she didn't seem to understand its importance, and how scared I was without it. His tone shifted instantly from concern to furious. "Do you realize how dangerous this is?" he barked, his voice sharp enough to cut through my panic. "That monitor isn't just a piece of equipment, it's your safety net. Without it, we can't detect irregularities. You need a replacement ASAP." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. Hearing him confirm my worst fears only deepened the pit of dread in my stomach. But then came the next hurdle: getting a replacement. Insurance companies aren't exactly known for their speed, and replacements cost thousands of dollars out of pocket. For someone like me, still recovering from surgeries and medical bills, that kind of money wasn't exactly sitting around waiting to be spent. While I waited anxiously for the new device to arrive, and prayed nothing went wrong in the meantime, life became a constant state of paranoia. Every little sensation in my chest sent my mind spiraling. Was that flutter normal? Was that twinge a sign of trouble? Without the monitor, I had no way of knowing. Each heartbeat felt like a ticking time bomb, counting down to something I couldn't predict or prevent. Meanwhile, Karen acted like nothing unusual had happened. Her kids paraded around the neighborhood with my stolen monitor, treating it like a toy. One day, I saw them pretending it was a walkie-talkie, holding it up to their mouths and shouting nonsense into the air. Another time, they used it as part of some elaborate game involving robots and spies. Each sighting felt like a dagger twisting deeper into my chest. I wanted to confront her again, to demand she return it immediately, or at least show some remorse for what she'd done. But every time I thought about approaching her, doubt crept in. Would she even listen? Or would she dismiss me again, laughing off my concerns like she did before? The memory of her smug smirk haunted me. She didn't care. Not really. And that realization hurt almost as much as losing the monitor itself. Greg, my best friend since college and one of the few people who truly understood what I was going through, noticed how stressed I was. He stopped by one evening with a six-pack of soda and a determined look on his face. "All right," he said, popping open a can and handing it to me. "Spill it. What's eating you?" At first, I hesitated. Talking about it meant reliving it, and I wasn't sure I had the energy for another breakdown. But Greg had a way of coaxing things out of me, even when I didn't want to share. So I told him everything. The theft, the fear, the frustration. By the time I finished, he looked angrier than I'd ever seen him. "That's insane," he said, shaking his head. "She can't just take something essential to your health and treat it like a toy. That's not okay. You should report her." "Report her?" I echoed, skeptical. "To who?" "The police. They're not going to arrest someone for borrowing a heart monitor." "She stole it." Greg shot back, emphasizing the word. "And not just any item. A medical device. That's theft. Assault, even. If she doesn't return it, you have every right to involve authorities." The idea sounded extreme, but part of me knew he was right. Still, the thought of confronting Karen again, and potentially escalating the situation, made my stomach twist. What if she fought back? What if she twisted the story to make me look unstable? After all, who would believe a fragile guy with a heart condition over a seemingly perfect suburban mom? As the days dragged on, the weight of the situation pressed heavier on my shoulders. Sleep became elusive, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. I felt trapped, stuck between fighting for justice and protecting my own peace of mind. All I wanted was my monitor back. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of respect for the fact that I was fighting to stay alive. The days that followed were a blur of anxiety and frustration. Every morning, I woke up with the same sinking feeling in my chest, both literal and metaphorical. My heart felt heavier than usual, as if it knew it was operating without its safety net. Each beat seemed louder, more pronounced, like a reminder of how precarious my situation had become. I tried to distract myself by keeping busy, but no matter what I did, my mind kept circling back to Karen and the stolen monitor. Greg kept pushing me to take action. "You can't let her get away with this," he said during one of his frequent check-ins. "She crossed a line, man. A big one." "I know," I muttered, pacing my living room. "But what am I supposed to do? March over there and demand it back? She'll just laugh in my face again." "Then don't go alone," Greg countered quickly. "Bring someone with you, or better yet, call the cops. They're not going to ignore something like this." I hesitated. The idea of involving the police felt extreme, almost surreal. Could they even do anything? Would they see this as seriously as I did? Or would they dismiss it as a petty neighborhood squabble? And then there was Karen herself. If she found out I'd gone to the authorities, would she retaliate? Make my life even harder than it already was? Despite my doubts, Greg's words stuck with me. He was right about one thing. Doing nothing wasn't an option anymore. So, after another sleepless night spent staring at the ceiling, I decided to write everything down. I documented every detail of the incident. The date, the time, what Karen said and did, how she ripped the monitor off me, and her complete lack of remorse afterward. I included screenshots of texts I'd sent to my doctor and photos of the raw patches on my skin where the sensors had been torn away. By the time I finished, I had a solid record of what had happened. Armed with my notes, I called the non-emergency line for the local police department. Explaining the situation was harder than I expected. The officer on the other end sounded skeptical at first, asking questions like, "Are you sure it wasn't misplaced? Or did she threaten you in any way?" But when I mentioned that the device was medical equipment essential to my health and provided evidence from my doctor, he grew more serious. "We'll send someone over to speak with you," he said finally. "And we'll also pay a visit to your neighbor." Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. What if Karen denied everything? What if she charmed the officers into believing her side of the story? These thoughts swirled in my head as I waited for the next step. Meanwhile, I couldn't help but notice how brazenly Karen continued to act. Her kids still played with the monitor, treating it like some kind of prize. One afternoon, I saw them tossing it back and forth like a ball while Karen watched from the porch, scrolling through her phone. She didn't seem remotely concerned that I might fight back. Word of the incident began spreading through the neighborhood faster than I anticipated. Neighbors who'd previously avoided conflict with Karen started approaching me cautiously, wanting to know if the rumors were true. At first, I was hesitant to talk about it. I didn't want to come across as bitter or dramatic, but eventually I realized they weren't judging me. In fact, many of them shared their own frustrations with Karen's behavior. "She's always parking her car in front of our driveway," Mrs. Patel confided one evening. "We've asked her nicely to move it, but she pretends not to hear us." "And last summer," added Mr. Thompson, shaking his head, "she threw a huge party that went until 3 in the morning. We called the noise control hotline twice." Hearing these stories made me feel less alone. It wasn't just me Karen targeted, it was everyone. She thrived on pushing boundaries, testing limits, and seeing how much she could get away with before someone pushed back. The difference was that most people hadn't reached their breaking point yet. Until now. As the days passed, I noticed subtle changes in the neighborhood dynamic. People who had once tiptoed around Karen began standing taller, speaking up more. Conversations that used to revolve around gardening tips or school events now included whispers about her antics. For the first time, I sensed a shift, a collective realization that enough was enough. Still, I couldn't shake the unease gnawing at me. The thought of facing Karen again filled me with dread. But deep down, I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. Something had to give. Whether it was through the police, the court of public opinion, or sheer force of will, Karen needed to understand that her actions had consequences, and sooner or later, those consequences would catch up to her. The day I finally confronted Karen again, I wasn't just nervous. I was terrified. But something inside me had shifted. Maybe it was the sleepless nights, the constant fear of my heart failing without warning, or the growing chorus of neighbors quietly supporting me from the sidelines. Whatever it was, I felt a spark of determination I hadn't felt before. This time, I wasn't going to back down. It was late in the evening when I decided to march over to her house. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across lawns and driveways. My hands trembled as I clenched them into fists at my sides, trying to steady myself. Greg had offered to come with me, but I insisted on doing this alone. If Karen wanted to play games, fine, but she wasn't going to intimidate me anymore. When I reached her front door, I hesitated for a moment, taking a deep breath. Then I knocked firmly, 3 sharp raps that echoed through the quiet night. A few seconds later, her husband answered. He looked surprised to see me, maybe even a little uncomfortable, but he stepped aside wordlessly and let me in. Clearly, he knew why I was there. Karen was lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing was wrong. Her kids were upstairs somewhere, giggling and stomping around, oblivious to the storm brewing below. When she saw me standing in her living room, her expression didn't change much. She barely glanced up, her tone dripping with indifference. "Oh, hi, neighbor. What do you want now?" I took a step closer, my voice shaking but firm. "I want my heart monitor back." She sighed dramatically, setting her phone down on the coffee table. "Still obsessing over that old thing? Honestly, get over yourself. It's probably gathering dust in the kids' room anyway." "In the kids' room?" I repeated, incredulous. "Are you serious right now? That's medical equipment. You can't just toss it aside like some broken toy." Karen shrugged, clearly unbothered. "Look, accidents happen. Maybe I got carried away. Shoo me." Her casual dismissal ignited a fire inside me. All the frustration, the fear, the helplessness, it all came rushing to the surface. "No, Karen," I said, my voice rising. "You don't get to brush this off. This isn't about you being carried away. This is about you endangering my life because you couldn't respect boundaries." For the first time since I'd met her, Karen's mask slipped. Her jaw tightened, and her eyes narrowed into slits. She stood up slowly, crossing her arms over her chest. "Listen, buddy," she snapped, her voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "I'm doing you a favor. If you're so fragile that losing a stupid gadget sends you into a spiral, maybe you should rethink living out here. People have lives to live, okay?" Her words hit like a punch to the gut, but they also fueled my resolve. "This isn't about inconvenience," I shot back, stepping closer despite the nerves twisting in my stomach. "This is about accountability. You can't just take things that don't belong to you and act like it's no big deal. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? How selfish?" Karen scoffed, rolling her eyes yet again. "Selfish? Oh, please, spare me the lecture. My kids needed something fun to play with, and you were sitting around hoarding a piece of junk you clearly don't need. That piece of junk keeps me alive." I shouted, my patience snapping. "It's not a toy, Karen. It's not a game. It's literally monitoring my heart rate. Without it, I could die. Is that what you want? For someone's death on your conscience?" For a split second, I thought I saw a flicker of doubt cross her face, but just as quickly, it vanished, replaced by her usual smugness. "Stop being so dramatic," she muttered, waving a hand dismissively. "You're fine. Everyone's fine. Now stop making such a fuss." That's when I realized something important. Karen wasn't going to admit she was wrong. Not today. Not ever. She thrived on control, on bending others to her will, and admitting fault would mean losing that power. And while part of me wanted to keep arguing, to force her to see reason, another part of me knew it was pointless. Some people only learn lessons the hard way. So instead of wasting more energy fighting her, I turned and walked out of her house, leaving her standing there with her arms crossed and her chin tilted defiantly. As I stepped back into the cool night air, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. The battle wasn't over. Not yet. But I'd said my piece. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt like I'd taken a stand. Whatever happened next, one thing was clear. Karen wasn't untouchable. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose that had been missing for days. The confrontation with Karen hadn't gone the way I'd hoped. She was still unrepentant, still dismissive, but it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I wasn't going to let her win. Not this time. I spent the morning gathering everything I needed. My notes from the incident, the emails and texts from my doctor explaining the importance of the heart monitor, and even statements from neighbors who were willing to back me up. Some of them had witnessed parts of the ordeal, while others simply knew how reckless Karen could be. Together, their voices painted a picture of someone who thought rules didn't apply to her, and who would stop at nothing to get what she wanted. By noon, I had a folder filled with evidence. It wasn't just about the stolen monitor anymore. It was about accountability. If Karen could take something as critical as medical equipment and treat it like a toy, what else was she capable of? I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for everyone in the neighborhood who had ever felt powerless against her antics. The police arrived later that afternoon. 2 officers, both calm and professional, knocked on Karen's door while I waited nervously across the street. From a distance, I watched as Karen answered, her usual confidence faltering slightly when she saw the uniforms. She tried to play it cool, offering them a tight smile and gesturing for them to come inside. But I noticed the way her hands fidgeted at her sides, betraying her unease. For nearly an hour, the officers stayed inside her house. Occasionally, I caught glimpses of movement through the windows. Karen pacing, the officers flipping through papers, her husband standing awkwardly in the corner. When they finally emerged, their expressions gave nothing away. They spoke briefly with Karen before turning toward me. One of them nodded, signaling that I should join them. As I approached, Karen glared at me, her face flushed with anger, or maybe embarrassment. "This is ridiculous," she muttered under her breath, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're blowing this completely out of proportion." The officer ignored her and turned to me. "We've reviewed your case," he said evenly, "and will need to confiscate the device immediately. Additionally, Mrs. Thompson has agreed to cooperate with our investigation." "Investigation?" Karen sputtered, her voice rising. "What investigation? There's nothing to investigate." The other officer stepped forward, his tone firm but polite. "Ma'am, taking medical equipment without consent is a serious matter. We'll also need to document its condition since it's been mishandled." That word, mishandled, seemed to strike a nerve. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no sound came out. For once, she was speechless. When the officers went inside to retrieve the monitor, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. A few minutes later, they returned holding the battered device. Its wires were tangled, its casing scratched, and one of the sensors looked completely detached. It was ruined, beyond repair. Karen stood nearby, arms crossed, glaring daggers at me, but I barely noticed. All I cared about was that justice was being served. Word spread quickly after that. Neighbors who had kept quiet about Karen's behavior began speaking up more openly. Someone mentioned how she blocked the communal driveway with her car during a snowstorm, leaving others stranded. Another recounted how she demanded they trim their tree because its branches hung too close to her property line, even though it was perfectly healthy and posed no threat. Each story added fuel to the growing fire of discontent. Karen must have sensed the tide turning against her, Over the next few days, she became noticeably quieter, retreating into her house and avoiding eye contact whenever anyone passed by. Her kids stopped playing outside as much, and the once loud music from her backyard disappeared altogether. It was as if she knew her reign of entitlement was crumbling. Then, one morning, I woke up to find her moving truck parked in front of her house. Boxes were stacked high on the curb, and movers hurried back and forth, loading furniture into the vehicle. Karen herself stood near the driver's seat, talking animatedly on her phone. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a tension in her posture, a stiffness that suggested she wasn't leaving by choice. Whether it was guilt, pressure from the community, or fear of further consequences, Karen and her family were gone within hours. No goodbye, no explanation, just silence where chaos used to be. The neighborhood felt different after that. Quieter, calmer. People smiled more freely, waved more often. Conversations flowed easily again, without the shadow of Karen's entitlement looming overhead. Life wasn't perfect. It never is. But it was peaceful. And sometimes, that's all you can ask for. As for me, I learned something important through all of this. Standing up for yourself isn't easy, but it's worth it. Even when the odds feel stacked against you, even when the person on the other side seems untouchable, you have power. You always do. And sometimes, using that power doesn't just change your life. It changes everyone else's too. With Karen gone, the neighborhood slowly began to heal. It wasn't an overnight transformation. Some scars take time to fade. But there was a noticeable shift in the air. The once oppressive tension that had lingered like storm clouds finally lifted, replaced by something lighter, freer. People who had avoided each other for fear of crossing Karen's invisible boundaries started reconnecting. Conversations became warmer, laughter more frequent. Even the streets seemed brighter somehow, as if the weight of her presence had dimmed them before. I'll admit, I didn't fully realize how much Karen had affected us all until she was gone. For months, we tiptoed around her, bending over backward to avoid conflict. We'd let her park wherever she wanted, blast music late into the night, and invade communal spaces without question. She'd turned our peaceful little corner of the world into a minefield of anxiety and resentment. But now it felt like we could breathe again. Still, life didn't return to normal immediately. Not for me, at least. Losing my heart monitor had left me feeling vulnerable in ways I hadn't anticipated. Every skipped heartbeat or random flutter sent my mind spiraling back to those panicked days when I didn't know if help would come in time. Even after the replacement arrived, a shiny new device with updated features, I found myself checking it obsessively, making sure it was working properly. It wasn't just about trust in the equipment anymore. It was about reclaiming trust in myself, in my ability to navigate this fragile new chapter of my life. Greg noticed the change in me. "You're getting better," he said one evening as we sat on my porch watching the sunset. "You seem calmer." "I guess I am," I replied thoughtfully. "But it's not just because Karen's gone. It's because I stood up for myself. For the first time in a long while, I didn't back down. And that feels powerful." He smiled, clinking his soda can against mine. "About time you figured that out, buddy." The weeks that followed were filled with small victories. Neighbors organized a block party to celebrate the end of what some jokingly called the Karen era. Kids played tag in the cul-de-sac, their laughter echoing through the trees. Someone set up a lemonade stand, a real one this time, and donated the proceeds to a local charity. There was a sense of unity, of shared triumph, that hadn't existed before. Even the little things felt meaningful. Mrs. Patel waved enthusiastically from her garden whenever I passed by. Mr. Thompson offered me a handful of tomatoes from his prized plants, insisting they were good for the heart. Even strangers walking their dogs stopped to chat, commenting on how nice it was to see the community coming together again. Karen's departure also sparked important conversations about boundaries and respect. A few neighbors suggested forming a loose committee to address issues before they escalated, a way to ensure no single person could dominate the neighborhood again. It wasn't formal or official, but it gave everyone a voice. For the first time, I felt like we were truly working together, not just coexisting. As for Karen herself, I never heard from her again. Rumor had it she moved to another suburb farther away, though no one knew for sure. Some speculated she'd already caused trouble there, citing reports of noise complaints and parking disputes. Others hoped she'd learned her lesson, though deep down, I doubted it. People like Karen rarely change unless forced to confront themselves honestly, and even then, it's rare. In the end, her absence taught me something invaluable. Peace isn't just the absence of chaos. It's the presence of balance. It's knowing your rights matter, your voice matters, and your well-being matters. Standing up to Karen wasn't easy. It was terrifying, exhausting, and emotionally draining. But it reminded me that I have power. We all do. Sometimes, it takes losing something essential to remind us of what we're willing to fight for. These days, Maplewood feels like home again. The sun sets a little slower, casting golden light across lawns dotted with dandelions and bicycles left forgotten in driveways. Laughter fills the air instead of arguments, and kindness outweighs entitlement. Life isn't perfect, but it's good, really good. And every time I glance at my heart monitor, securely attached to my waistband, I'm reminded of how far I've come, not just physically, but emotionally. That little device isn't just keeping me alive anymore. It's a symbol of resilience, of standing firm when everything inside you wants to crumble. Sometimes, the hardest battles lead to the sweetest victories. And in this case, the victory wasn't just mine. It belonged to all of us.